I am a liar at 72 years of age. Not the kind of liar who cheats or steals. I'm the kind who smiles at church potlucks and says, "Oh, we're doing great." The kind who tells his daughter on the phone that everything is under control while the unpaid electric bill sits on the kitchen counter. The kind who parks his 12-year-old Camry 2 blocks away from the food bank so no one will recognize the car. No one knows I've lost everything. Not my wife, God rest her soul, who died believing we had made it. Not my children, who think I'm living comfortably with a nice nest egg in the house where we raised them. Not my neighbors, who wave from their driveways and assume that the man who worked for 38 years at the same factory must have something to show for it. But I don't. I lost everything in the 3 years after I retired. And the worst part? No one put a gun to my head. No one cheated me or stole from me. I did it to myself, through a combination of bad luck and timing, even worse planning, and the kind of blind optimism that makes you think the universe owes you a soft landing just because you played by the rules. It doesn't. And here I am, years later, still pretending, still smiling, still lying, because the truth is too heavy to carry out loud, and shame is a monster that eats you from the inside until there's nothing left but a hollow shell that says, "I'm fine," when it's falling apart. My name is Robert Marsh. I live in Dayton, Ohio, or at least I did until 8 months ago. I worked as a production supervisor at a mid-sized auto parts manufacturer. 41 years, if you count the apprenticeship. I started at 19, fresh out of high school, and retired at 65 with a pension, a 401k, and the belief that I had done everything right. Carol and I talked about retirement the way people talk about heaven: vague, distant, perfect. We would travel. We would visit our grandchildren in Arizona. We would finally finish the basement. She wanted to take a cruise to Alaska. I wanted to fish more. Simple dreams. The kinds of dreams ordinary people have when they work their whole lives and hope it will mean something in the end. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor either. The house was paid off. The cars were old but reliable. I had about $340,000 in my 401k, a pension that paid $1,850 a month, and Social Security starting at $2,100. On paper, we were looking at about $4,000 a month. The financial advisor I met with just once, because consultations weren't cheap, said we'd be fine as long as we were reasonable. Reasonable. I came to hate that word. I came to hate the casual way he said it, as if being reasonable were just a matter of choice, as if life didn't have a way of making reasonableness irrelevant. There's an envelope I keep in the kitchen drawer. It's from the Social Security Administration, dated March 2018. The paper is soft now from being unfolded and refolded so many times. It tells me the amount of my benefit, $2,100. It seemed like a fortune when I first saw it. Combined with my pension, it seemed like we had made it. It seemed like all those decades of getting up at 5 in the morning, working double shifts when we needed extra money, saving instead of spending, had finally paid off. That envelope is the only thing I look at on some mornings when the dread is too heavy to ignore. I don't know why I keep it. Maybe because it reminds me of a version of myself who still believed the numbers would work out, who still believed in spreadsheets and calculators and the American promise that if you work hard enough, long enough, you'll be secure. I believed that. God, how I believed it. Retirement began the way it should begin. We had a party. My coworkers gave me a plaque. Carol made a cake. I gave a speech about how grateful I was, how excited we were for the next chapter. I meant every word. I looked at Carol that night, sitting in the living room surrounded by people we'd known for decades, and I thought, we did it. We really did it. The first month, we slept late. We had breakfast on the porch. We drove to Lake Erie and spent the day walking along the shore. Carol held my hand and said, "We deserve this, Bobby." And I believed her. I believed we had earned this, that it was rightfully ours. Autumn arrived soft and golden. The leaves turned. The air turned crisp. We spent our afternoons in the backyard, pulling weeds from the garden Carol had tended for 20 years. We watched Jeopardy every night. We talked about the cruise to Alaska as if it were a certainty, not just a dream. And then, slowly, like the changing light as the sun sets, things began to change. The problem started small, the way the worst problems always do. Carol had been feeling tired for a while. We attributed it to age, stress, the usual. But in October, 6 months after retirement, she could no longer ignore it. She went to the doctor, then another doctor, then a specialist. Stage 3 breast cancer. The words hit like a freight train. I remember sitting in that exam room, the beige walls, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, the doctor talking, but I couldn't process the words. Carol held my hand so tightly that my fingers went numb, but we told ourselves we could handle it. We had Medicare. We had supplemental insurance. We had savings. What we didn't have was a realistic understanding of how quickly medical expenses could drain everything we had built. That's something they don't tell you when you retire. They don't tell you that Medicare has holes the size of canyons. They don't tell you that supplemental insurance doesn't mean everything is covered. They don't tell you that a serious illness can turn decades of careful saving into dust in a matter of months. But I found out. God, how I found out. The treatments began immediately. Chemotherapy, radiation, medications with names I couldn't pronounce. Carol lost her hair. She lost weight. She lost the color in her face. But she never lost hope, at least not in front of me. She smiled through the nausea. She made jokes about the wig we bought. She said she would fight, that she would win, that we would be okay. And I believed her, because I needed to believe her. Medicare covered part of it. The supplemental plan covered more. But the co-pays, the deductibles, the out-of-network specialists, the experimental drugs that insurance wouldn't touch, those came out of our pockets. Those came out of the 401k I had built dollar by dollar over 40 years. In the first year, we spent $47,000 on medical expenses. $47,000. Let that sink in for a moment. $47,000 in 1 year. That's more than I made in a year when I started at the factory. That's more than we paid for our first house. That's almost as much as we received from our pension and Social Security combined for an entire year. And it was gone. Just gone. Swallowed up by a system that seemed designed to turn personal tragedy into financial ruin. I pulled everything out of the 401k. What else was I supposed to do? Let her suffer? Let her die? Because we didn't want to touch the retirement fund? That wasn't even a choice. It was the only thing a husband could do. The only thing a decent human being would do. But here's the thing no one tells you about withdrawing money from a 401k at the beginning of retirement. Timing is everything. That's something I didn't know. Something the financial advisor didn't emphasize. Something I should have researched, should have understood, should have prepared for. But I didn't, and that ignorance cost me everything. I retired in March 2018. The market was flying high. My 401k had just hit $340,000, the most it had ever been. I looked at that number on the statement and felt invincible. I felt smart. I felt like I had beaten the system, played the game, and won. But the market doesn't care about your feelings. The market doesn't care about your timing. The market doesn't care if you just retired or if your wife is sick or if you did everything right. By December 2018, the market had fallen 20%. My account was suddenly worth $272,000. $68,000 had vanished. Not because I spent it. Not because someone stole it. It just disappeared, evaporated into the cruel abstraction of the stock market. I didn't panic. I had been through downturns before. My advisor's voice echoed in my head. Stay the course. Don't sell low. It will rebound. The market always rebounds. Just wait. But I didn't have the luxury of waiting. Carol needed treatment. The bills kept coming. I had to withdraw money, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. And when you withdraw money during a downturn, you're selling assets at their lowest value. You're crystallizing losses. You're taking that theoretical number on the screen and turning it into a real, permanent loss. They call this return sequence risk. I had never heard the term until it was too late. I never understood the implications until I was living them. Here's how it works. And pay attention, because this is important. If the market crashes at the beginning of your retirement and you're forced to withdraw money, you deplete your savings faster than if the crash happened later. You're selling stocks when they're worth less, which means you have to sell more shares to get the same amount of money. And those stocks you sold, they're gone. They can't recover when the market recovers. It's a spiral of financial death, and I was in it, spinning, falling, watching the numbers shrink month after month as I withdrew to keep Carol alive and pay the bills and pretend everything would be okay. The scene that haunts me took place in a windowless office at the brokerage firm. I sat across the table from a man in his 30s, young enough to be my son, staring at a computer screen that showed my account balance, $198,000. Mr. Marsh, he said gently, in a tone you use with children or elderly people who don't understand. You're withdrawing at a rate that's not sustainable. I know, I said. My voice sounded hollow, as if it were coming from far away. But what am I supposed to do? My wife is sick. He nodded, sympathetic, useless. Just another young guy in a tie and a spreadsheet telling me the numbers didn't add up, as if I wasn't living the numbers every day. I understand, he said. But if you continue at this rate, you'll deplete the account in less than 5 years. 5 years. Carol and I had planned for 30. I drove home that day with my hands shaking on the wheel. I parked in the garage and sat there in the dark for an hour, just breathing, trying to understand how we had gotten here, trying to understand how doing everything right could still lead to this. There was no answer. There is only what is. The brutal, indifferent reality of the numbers. She fought for 2 years. 2 long, brutal, expensive years. 2 years of hope and fear intertwined so tightly that I couldn't tell them apart. 2 years of watching the woman I loved shrink and weaken and disappear little by little. And in April 2020, she died in a hospital room that smelled of disinfectant and despair. I held her hand as the machines fell silent. I kissed her forehead. I told her I loved her. I told her it was okay, that she could go, that I would be fine. It was a lie, the first of many lies I would tell in the years to come. And then I went home to a house that felt too big and too empty, with $103,000 left in my 401k and pain so heavy I could barely breathe. You'd think losing your wife would be the worst thing that could happen, and it is. God, it is. But pain has a way of masking other disasters until they're too big to ignore. I stopped paying attention. The bills piled up. I ate whatever was easy, frozen dinners, canned soup, cereal straight from the box at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't check the mail. I sat in the dark living room and stared at the TV without watching it, just letting the blue light wash over me as the hours passed. When I finally surfaced, 6 months had passed. 6 months of existing on autopilot, of waking up and wondering why I bothered, of going to bed and hoping I wouldn't wake up. That's when I saw the numbers. I really saw them, for the first time since Carol died. The 401k was at $86,000. I had been withdrawing money on autopilot, paying the mortgage, the utility bills, the credit cards we had racked up during Carol's treatment. I signed the checks without looking at the amounts. I approved the withdrawals without doing the math, and the numbers were terrible. The pension and Social Security covered about $4,000 a month. But household expenses, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities consumed $1,800. Minimum credit card payments took another $600. That left $1,600 for everything else. Groceries, gas, medicine, the little emergencies that aren't little when you're living on the edge. It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close to enough. I started making choices. The kind of choices you never think you'll have to make. The kind of choices that keep you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how your life got to this point. Medicine or groceries, heating or electricity, pride or survival. One morning in February 2021, I was at the Walgreens pharmacy, staring at the cashier. The store was crowded. People behind me in line. The fluorescent light making everything look raw and exposed. "That's $340, she said. Young, probably in college. Probably never had to choose between medicine and food. I looked at the two prescriptions in front of me. Blood pressure medicine, cholesterol pills, things I had been taking for years, things my doctor said were essential. Can I just get one? I asked. My voice was low. Ashamed, her face softened. She had seen this before. Probably saw it every day. Seniors like me having to make these impossible choices. Which one? I pointed to the blood pressure pills. Cholesterol could wait. Or at least that's what I told myself. That's how I rationalized it. I paid. I left. I sat in the parking lot and cried. I cried for the first time since Carol's funeral. I just sat there in my 12-year-old Camry with a single prescription on the passenger seat and sobs that shook me so hard I thought I was going to throw up. Credit card companies started calling. I stopped answering. Then the letters came. Red envelopes. Final notices. Threats of legal action. Words like default and collection and judgment. I thought about bankruptcy. I thought about selling the house. I thought about a lot of things I never imagined I'd have to think about. But mostly I just existed, day after day, making the numbers not add up, watching the account dwindle, waiting for the inevitable. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I don't know why I remember it was Tuesday, but I do. Some things are etched into memory with a clarity that makes them impossible to forget. I was at the grocery store, the cheap one on the south side, where the fluorescent lights buzzed and half the shelves were empty. I had $43 in my checking account. I needed to make it last until my Social Security check arrived in 4 days. 4 days? 96 hours? And $43 between me and nothing. I filled my cart carefully. Bread, peanut butter, eggs, pasta, store-brand tomato sauce. I avoided the meat section. I avoided the produce section. I avoided looking at other people's carts, at families with children, at young couples laughing as they chose which wine to buy. At the checkout, the total came to $48. I stared at the screen, the bright red numbers mocking me. $48. $5 more than I had. I said. The cashier was waiting. The people behind me were waiting. Everyone was waiting. Can you ... take the eggs? She didn't say anything. She just scanned the eggs and pressed cancel. The total dropped to 44. Still too much. Still impossible. And the pasta? 41. I paid. I walked out with a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a can of sauce. $7.30 worth of food to last 4 days. The man behind me in line had a cart full of steaks and wine and imported cheeses and things I didn't even recognize. I heard him complain to his wife about the price of salmon. I drove home. I unpacked my pathetic grocery bag. I sat at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and a pen. It was time to face the truth, the complete and horrible truth that I had been avoiding. I wrote down everything I owed, everything I had, everything I was receiving, every number, every dollar, every bill. No fooling myself. No rounding up or assuming miracles. The math was simple and brutal. I was losing $400 a month, every month. $400 I didn't have, couldn't earn, couldn't get back. At that rate, the $401K would be gone in less than 2 years. And then what? Then nothing. Then Social Security and the pension and whatever government benefits I qualified for. Then real poverty. Not just the fallacy of being poor while still owning a house. Then the kind of poverty I had read about and judged and assumed would never happen to me because I had worked hard and saved and done everything right. I did what I should have done 3 years earlier. I asked for help. Not from a financial advisor. I couldn't afford one. From a free counseling service at the senior center. A woman named Diane, who had spent 30 years as a social worker and seen every flavor of broken. She was in her 60s, gray hair, kind eyes that had seen too much pain to judge anymore. She didn't judge. She just listened, and then she laid it all out. "Robert," she said, leaning over the table in the small conference room where we were meeting, "you're trying to maintain a lifestyle you can no longer afford. The house is killing you." I knew she was right, but selling the house felt like admitting defeat. That house was where we raised our children, where Carol and I celebrated birthdays, where I carried her over the threshold in 1976, both of us laughing, both of us young, both of us believing the world was ours. Every room held memories. The bedroom where our children slept. The kitchen where Carol made pancakes on Saturday mornings. The living room where we set up the Christmas tree every year. The backyard where I taught my son to play baseball. How do you sell that? How do you put a price on a lifetime? "It's just a building," Diane said gently but firmly. "Your memories go with you. The house is just walls and a roof. Carol isn't there. Your children have grown up and moved away. You're holding on to something that's destroying you." I cried in that office. I cried in front of a stranger who was trying to help me. I cried because she was right, and I knew she was right, and I hated that she was right. I listed the house in May 2024. It sold in 3 weeks. The market was good. The house was in a decent neighborhood. The new owners were a young couple expecting their first child. I watched them walk through the house, their eyes shining, making plans, talking about paint colors and room decor. I watched them see what I had seen 50 years earlier, a place to build a life. And then I signed the papers and left. After closing costs, the realtor's cut, and paying off the remaining credit card debt, I walked away with $87,000. Combined with what was left in my 401k, about $64,000 I had won, $151,000. It sounds like a lot. It isn't. Not when you're 72 and have no way to earn more. Not when every dollar you spend is depleting a resource that can't be replenished. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a cheaper part of town. The rent is $850 a month. The building smells like old carpet and someone else's food. The walls are thin. I can hear the couple next door arguing about money every Sunday night. I can hear the woman above me pacing back and forth at 3 in the morning. I can hear everything, and everything reminds me that this is not a home. It's just a place to sleep, a place to wait. I sold the Camry and bought a used Corolla for $6,000 in cash. I canceled cable. I canceled the landline I'd had for 40 years. I shop at Aldi and cook all my meals. I take generic versions of my medications. I don't go out. I don't travel. I don't do much of anything. I exist. I just exist. I wake up. I eat. I watch TV. I go to sleep. I repeat. This is my life now. This is the reward for 41 years of hard work. But here's what I've learned, too late, but I've learned it. The 4% rule is a lie if you retire at the wrong time. Everyone talks about the 4% rule as if it were gospel. Withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, and you'll be fine for 30 years. But that rule assumes average market returns. It doesn't account for what happens if you retire just before a crash and start withdrawing money while everything is down. It doesn't account for what happens when life forces you to withdraw more than 4% because your wife is dying and you have no choice. I needed $13,600 a year from my 401k to balance the books. That was only 4% when I started. But after the 2018 crash and Carol's medical expenses, I was withdrawing 8%, then 10%, and 15%. The math collapsed. The numbers stopped working. And once you're in a spiral, it's almost impossible to get out. Medical expenses will destroy you. This is the truth that no one wants to admit. Medicare isn't enough. Supplemental insurance isn't enough. If you or your spouse gets seriously ill, the costs will eat away at your savings like acid. There's no way to prepare for this except to have more money than you think you'll ever need, and even then, it may not be enough. Carol and I did everything right. We had insurance, we had savings, we had a plan, and yet, one illness was all it took to destroy everything. Timing is everything. This is perhaps the hardest lesson. I retired in 2018, believing I had enough. If I had retired in 2015, I would have weathered the downturn with 3 extra years of earnings. If I had retired in 2020, I would have caught the post-COVID recovery. But I retired in 2018, and timing destroyed me. You can't choose when life happens, but you can prepare for bad timing by having more protection, a more flexible plan, and a willingness to adapt. You can have extra years of cash expenses. You can have a plan B and a plan C. You can be willing to sell your house, move to a cheaper state, go back to work if necessary. But I had none of that. I had arrogance and assumptions, and the belief that because I had worked hard, the universe would somehow protect me. Pride is expensive. I should have sold the house the moment I realized I couldn't afford it. I should have moved to a cheaper state. I should have asked my children for help. But I didn't, because I was too proud to admit I was failing. Too proud to admit I didn't have everything under control. Too proud to let anyone see the truth. Pride cost me 3 years and $80,000. It cost me the opportunity to save what was left. It cost me the dignity I was trying to protect. The system is designed to let you fall. This is the hardest thing to accept. Social Security replaces about 40% of your pre-retirement income if you're lucky. Medicare has gaps you could drive a truck through. Pensions are disappearing. The stock market is a casino where retirees are gambling with money they can't afford to lose. No one is coming to save you. The safety net has holes, and if you fall through them, you fall hard, and no one is there to catch you. If you continue are reading this, or watching this, or however this reaches you, I need you to listen to me. I'm not special. I'm not exceptionally unlucky. I'm not a cautionary tale from some distant world that has nothing to do with you. I am you in 30 years if you don't get this right. I'm what happens when you do everything you're told to do, and still the numbers don't work out. I'm what happens when the timing is wrong, and life hits you with the unexpected, and you don't have enough wiggle room to absorb the impact. I did everything I was told to do. I worked hard. I saved. I invested. I stayed with the same company for 4 decades because I was told if loyalty mattered, that it would be rewarded. I didn't spend money on stupid things. I lived modestly. I drove old cars. I brought my lunch to work. I didn't go to fancy restaurants. I didn't buy boats or motorcycles or vacation homes. I followed the rules. I followed the plan. I thought I had done enough, but I didn't understand the risk of sequence of returns. I didn't know that timing could be as important as value. I didn't plan for medical catastrophes, not really. I didn't stress test my budget under the worst possible conditions. I didn't have a plan B. I assumed that if I worked hard enough, long enough, the universe would somehow take care of me. I was wrong. And now here I am, at 72, living in a 1-bedroom apartment that smells like defeat, eating peanut butter sandwiches, and lying to my kids about how I'm doing. So here's what I'm saying to you, whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, don't wait. Start planning now, not tomorrow, not next year. Now, do the numbers. Stress test them. Assume the worst-case scenario and prepare for it. Assume you'll get sick. Assume your spouse will get sick. Assume the market will crash right when you retire. Assume everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and then plan to have enough to survive anyway. Don't rely solely on Social Security. It's not enough. It was never designed to be enough. It was designed to be a supplement, not the entire foundation. If Social Security is the bulk of your retirement income, you're in trouble. You need more. You need savings. You need investments. You need multiple sources of income, because if one fails, you still have others to catch you. Don't underestimate healthcare costs. They will be higher than you think, much higher. Medicare doesn't cover everything. Supplemental insurance doesn't cover everything. If you or someone you love becomes seriously ill, the bills will come like an avalanche and won't stop until everything is gone or you are dead. Plan to have at least $100,000 set aside just for medical expenses. And even that may not be enough, but it's better than nothing. Don't assume the market will save you. If you retire during a downturn, you're done. The first few years of retirement are the most critical. If the market crashes and you're forced to withdraw money while everything is down, you're selling stocks at their lowest value. Those stocks are gone. They can't recover. You've crystallized the loss and destroyed your future in a single forced action. So have at least 2, preferably 3 years of expenses in cash when you retire. Not invested. Not in the market. In cash. In a savings account or government bonds or something as safe and boring as you can find. That way, if the market crashes, you can live off the cash while you wait for things to recover. You're not forced to sell at the bottom. You give yourself time. Don't let pride prevent you from making difficult choices. Downsize early, not late. Sell the big house before it becomes an anchor. Move to a cheaper area. Move to a state with a lower cost of living. Go back to work if you need to. Ask for help. Ask your children for help. Ask the government for help. Ask anyone who can give it, because your ego is not worth your financial security. I could have sold the house 3 years earlier. I could have moved into an apartment when Carol died. I could have saved $80,000. But I didn't because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want to admit that I was failing. Because I didn't want my children to see me as a failure. Now they don't see me at all because I'm lying to them. I'm hiding the truth because the shame of lying seems less than the shame of admitting how much I've messed up. And if you think it can't happen to you, if you think you're too smart, too prepared, too careful, let me tell you something. I thought that too. I thought I was smart. I thought I had a plan. I thought 40 years of steady work meant something. I thought the system, imperfect as it is, would at least catch me if I fell. It didn't. No one caught me. I fell and kept falling. And now I'm here, at the bottom, looking up and wondering how I got here. There's an envelope in my kitchen drawer from the Social Security Administration. It tells me I get $2,100 a month. Some days, I take it out and stare at it for a long time. I stare at the number. I stare at the date, March 2018. Another life. Another man who thought that number meant security. He was wrong. I was wrong. Some mornings, I wake up, and for a moment, I forget where I am. I forget that Carol is gone. I forget that the house is gone. I forget that everything is gone. And then reality comes flooding back the thin walls. The smell of old carpet, the noise of strangers living their lives around me. And I remember. I remember that I am a 72-year-old liar living in a cheap apartment, pretending to be fine when I'm not. I remember that I did everything right and still lost. There is no redemption coming for me. There is no happy ending. There will be no last-minute miracle where everything works out. This is it. This is my life now until I die. Existing with less. Lying to the people I love. Making impossible choices between basic necessities. And the funniest part? Sometimes I still see people from the factory. I run into them at the supermarket or the bank or the pharmacy. They ask how I am. They ask how retirement is. And I smile. I smile and say, "Oh, it's great. Keeping busy. You know how it is." And they smile back and say, "Yeah, you worked hard. You deserve to enjoy it." And then we go our separate ways, and they'll never know. They'll never know that the man they just greeted, the man who smiled and said everything was fine, was lying. That he has $300 in his checking account and doesn't know how he's going to pay next month's rent. That he eats peanut butter straight from the jar because he can't afford to buy enough to make proper meals. That he takes half the dose of his medication to make it last longer. That he's terrified all the time. But they can't know, because if they know, then it's real. If I say it out loud, then I have to face it. And I'm not ready for that. I don't know if I ever will be. So I keep lying. I keep smiling. I keep pretending. And at night, when it's dark and quiet, and there's no one to lie to but myself, I sit at the kitchen table with that envelope from the Social Security Administration and think about all the choices I've made, all the things I didn't know, all the ways the system failed me and how I failed myself. I think about Carol. I wonder what she would say if she knew, if she would be disappointed, if she would understand, if she would forgive me for losing everything we worked for together. I wonder what my children will think when they finally find out. And they will find out, eventually, when I die, and there is nothing to leave them except debt and the knowledge that their father spent the last years of his life lying to them. Will they be angry? Will they understand? Will they wish I had told them that I had asked for help? I don't know. I honestly don't know. What I do know is this. If my story prevents even one person from making the mistakes I made, then maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all for nothing. If you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s, thinking that retirement is some distant problem you'll solve later, listen to me. Later comes faster than you think. Later comes all at once. And if you're not ready, if you haven't done the work, if you don't have the money, then you'll be me. You'll be the old man at the grocery store, having to put the eggs back because you can't afford them. You'll be the person at the pharmacy, having to choose which medications to take. You'll be the liar smiling and saying everything is fine when you're falling apart. If you're in your 60s and approaching retirement, do the math now, not later. Now. Be brutal and honest. Don't round up. Don't assume the best case scenario. Assume that everything will go wrong, because it often does. And if the numbers don't work out, if you don't have enough, then change the plan. Work a few more years. Sell the big house now while it's still a choice, not a desperate necessity. Cut expenses. Do whatever it takes. Because once you retire, your options shrink. Once you're living on fixed income, every mistake is magnified. Every unexpected expense is a crisis. Every market downturn is a potential disaster. There is no safety net. There is no do-over. There is no second chance. This is it. This is your life, your retirement, your future. And if you mess it up, if you don't plan right, if you don't prepare for the worst, then you will be me. And believe me when I say this, you don't want to be me. I'm 72 years old. I should be traveling. I should be visiting my grandchildren. I should be doing all the things Carl and I plan to do together. Instead, I'm sitting in a cheap apartment, eating peanut butter sandwiches, counting the days until my next Social Security check, and lying to everyone I know about how bad it is. This is the reward for 41 years of hard work. This is the American promise. This is the reality of retirement when you don't have enough, and the timing is wrong, and life hits you with the unexpected. It's lonely. It's scary. It's humiliating. And no one talks about it. No one admits it. No one tells the truth about how many seniors are struggling, how many are making impossible choices, how many are lying to their families, because the shame is too great to carry out loud. But I am telling. I am telling now. I am breaking the silence, because if I don't, if I keep lying until I die, then all of this meant nothing. My name is Robert Marsh. I'm 72 years old. I worked for 41 years. I did everything right. And I lost everything. Don't let this happen to you. Please. Don't let this happen to you. There's an envelope in my drawer from the Social Security Administration, dated March 2018. The paper is soft now from being unfolded and refolded so many times. $2,100 a month. It seemed like a fortune then. Now it seems like a cruel joke. Some days I look at it and think about when I was full of hope, when I thought that number meant we had made it, when I believed that hard work was enough. Other days I look at it and feel nothing, just emptiness. Just the weight of all the years between that moment and this one. And sometimes, rarely, I look at it and think, Maybe telling this story is worth something. Maybe my pain can prevent someone else's pain. Maybe admitting the truth, finally, can mean something. That's the hope I cling to. It's small, it's fragile, but it's all I have. No one knows I lost everything. But now you know, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that has to be enough, because there's nothing else.